Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Ingram Jones, as you know, and I'm with me. I have Uncle James Ali Bashir. Uncle, you're reading the news, and slightly disturbing to hear that legendary former heavyweight champion of the world, Evander Holyfield, suggesting that Vladimir Klitschko should leave Jonathan Banks and yourself and join Freddie Roach. What are your thoughts about this? I mean, you're an experienced trainer. You're not even head coach of Vladimir Klitschko. You've got Jonathan Banks there. So I thought Evander could have at least said, you know what? Okay, maybe him and Banks are not working out. The experience of Bashir, none of that was mentioned. Just he should up and leave and go to Freddie Roach. What are your thoughts?
I think that Evander Holyfield spoke out of turn because he didn't do no research, which figures. You know, he's an athlete. He's a boxer, not a thinker. You know, he's not a scientist. You know, so I expect stuff like that to come from the far left or come from some uninformed fan. So by him saying that, you know, it was like something that came off the top of his head without any research at all. He didn't stop to question himself or question any kind of information that was out there concerning the longevity of myself being in that camp.
But it's just bizarre because I'm sure Evander knows the setup in the camp of Jonathan Banks, yourself. I mean, he's got to know. I mean, I've seen him with Vladimir Klitschko before, taking photos of Vladimir. I'm sure, in fact, even I saw him recently with the whole Riggs thing. He must
have associated my being there as being the help. You know, that I was just to help. Like thousands of people just assume that I'm some kind of good luck charm or some kind of trinket.
Mascot, maybe.
Perhaps. And that's what has been the norm throughout the time that I've been with him, you know. I can only show my deeds through my works. You know, when I do my work, then that's where I'm most proven at, you know.
But the question has to be asked, and I'm going to ask, I'm going in tonight. I mean, don't you get almost fed up of being the assistant coach? I know that you're with Usyk and you're doing great things with Usyk. You're doing great things at Usyk. You're doing fantastic stuff at Usyk, and he's developing well as a fighter. But don't you get fed up of the whole? He's an assistant trainer. You know, he's the guy in the back room. And how do you remain so patient with this? Because it's either you enjoy being the assistant, or you know you're a very patient man. What is it?
I think that I learned patience throughout my childhood and much of my adulthood. My being a Muslim teaches me patience. So I always incorporate my belief in what I'm doing in my workplace. Even if I don't vocalize it, I always incorporate it with what I'm doing in my workplace. Because of my patience, that's why I'm with Alexander Usyk. When Vladimir Klitschko first dubbed Jonathan Banks as the trainer, I felt slighted. I felt, whoa, what's happening here? I've been the assistant trainer for the last, 10 years at that time. And Jonathan Banks was only 30 years old at the time. In fact, when Emmanuel passed, Vladimir Klitschko told me in front of Jonathan Banks that I would leave the camp. And then several days later, he came back and says, I changed my mind. Jonathan Banks is going to leave the camp. I said, okay, cool. So I felt slighted. You know, I felt the same way that anybody in my position would feel. Would you have felt that way?
Absolutely. But how have you been able to, if you felt so slighted, how could you stay there for so long?
I maintained my patience, and several weeks later, I became the trainer for Alexander Usyk. So because I was patient, I was able to meet and become the trainer for Alexander Usyk. Usyk and I worked together 3 days. And in those 3 days, he said, "You're the guy that's going to train me. You're the guy that's going to help me make the transition from being an amateur into a pro." In 3 days, we worked together in the Klitschko camp, and he called me and said, "Hey, man, you're the trainer. You're the guy that's going to train me." So here's a guy that has had over 300 amateur fights. Here's a guy that's the Olympic gold medalist, won the World Games. All the trainers that he's been exposed to throughout his travels, he chooses me in 3 days out of all the people that he had been through. And mind you, he had been trained by Lomachenko's father throughout the amateurs. So he had the ability to choose the who's who of all the trainers in the world, but out of those trainers, he chose me. So because of my patience, I'm here. But it's not to say that I wasn't slighted, you know? And no disrespect to Jonathan Banks. But my thinking is Jonathan Banks will have his chance. He's a young man. You know, I've labored for years, 46 years to be exact. I've worked with the who's who of boxing. And I've been very patient. Some people get their break coming out the gate, you know. But I've been a trainer for all these guys. I've been a trainer longer than John David Jackson, longer than Ronnie Shields, longer than Freddie Roach. One of my boxers fought Freddie Roach in Atlantic City, and I thought my boxer got robbed, you know. So that goes back to show you how long I've been training professional fighters. I've trained before those guys, and maybe I've been training boxers longer than Abel Sanchez or Virgil Hunter. I've probably been training boxers longer. I've been training boxers since 1970. So perhaps I've been training boxers longer than most of the guys that's out there. But I'm patient. I'm ever patient. I'm not one of those what I call designer trainers. I'm an in-depth trainer, a hands-on trainer, and I do good work. Anybody that's worked with me over the years, anybody that's worked with me, past or present, will tell you that I'm a solid trainer.
So how can Evander Holyfield overlook somebody like yourself? Just overlook you and go straight to Freddie Roach?
Well, because people talk about what they know. You understand? People will talk about what they're most familiar with. The average fan and some of the boxers, they'll go with the things that people pushing these people. They push these people off. This is the guy. This is the trainer. This is when you hear enough of that, there, you know, you go with what you know. You know, you go with what you know.
So what's your relationship?
So what's my relationship
with Jonathan Banks? What's that like?
Jonathan Banks and I, we have a pretty good relationship. You know, I trained Jonathan Banks. I met Jonathan Banks. He's 15 years old. You know, so Jonathan Banks and I have shared a long time together. In fact, I'm the reason Jonathan Banks became a regular in Vladimir Klitschko training camp. I went to Vladimir Klitschko at Emmanuel's request. I think we was fighting a lefty. It might have been Chris Bird or somebody. And Emmanuel said, "Listen, I want you to go to Vladimir and get Jonathan Banks in this camp." Mm-hmm. For some reason, he didn't want to do it. He had me to do it. And I went to Vladimir, and I kept pushing Banks. I kept pushing Banks. I kept pushing Banks. I kept pushing Banks. We got into the training camp. I kept pushing Banks. I kept pushing Banks. He can box lefty. He can box lefty. Bring him in. He's got good speed. He's got the right height. He can move, blah, 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 blah. And I kept pushing Banks. I kept pushing Banks. And then it finally came down to, okay, if he comes to the camp, then he has to live in your room with you. You will have to share the room with him because I'm not going to pay for him. Vladimir didn't pay for the Jonathan Banks he didn't give because he really wasn't big on it. That's why he didn't pay for him as a sparring partner. Everybody else had a room, but he said that Jonathan Banks would live. So Jonathan lived with me. He lived with me, and then he proved himself, and from that point on, he became a stand-in in the Vladimir Klitschko training camp. But it was me. It was me that kept pushing Banks to come into camp, you know. So I think that today that me and Jonathan have a pretty good relationship. I think Jonathan respects me.
So talk me how it works in the gym. You're the guy that's got all the experience. You know the ins and outs of the boxing world. As a trainer, as a coach, as a mentor. And then you've got somebody who you've looked after since he was 15 years old. And he is the guy that says yay or nay. He effectively, after Vladimir, is your boss. How does that work out?
Well, I never viewed it as him being my boss. I viewed him as the trainer for Vladimir Klitschko. That's what Vladimir chose. So
he's the head coach, though, which means that
he's the head coach. But that's it. With saying that, it's like I got a special room in the training camp,
right?
And Jonathan Banks recognizes that, and everybody else recognizes that. You know, whatever Vladimir does, Vladimir come to the corner right there in the ring and say, "How am I doing? You know, what do I need to do differently? Am I doing all right? If something is wrong, I'll say this is wrong. That needs to be changed." And he'll change it effectively. He'll change it. So it's like, I don't know, maybe it's some kind of rhythm that Jonathan Banks and Vladimir Klitschko has or had, or whatever, however you want to put it. It's some kind of comfort zone he has with Jonathan. So it's a lot of things that make fighters chose trainers. You know, so I don't know what it is, but maybe found some kind of comfort zone with it, because him and Jonathan sparred a lot of rounds together. And mind you, I was the one training Jonathan to box Vladimir.
Somebody said on one of the YouTube comments was that maybe Bashir's going senile, that you're a black man that they want to keep quiet. That was one of the comments that was made on the YouTube channel, that you're going senile, you're going slightly mad, you're a bit bitter.
Oh, well, that's a new one, you know. I get a lot of email and a lot of opinions on Facebook and stuff like that. And it humors me sometimes until the wee hours of the night. I look at some of the comments that are made. But, you know, just to satisfy anybody that's thinking that, no, I'm nowhere near being senile. I'm still in pretty good shape at 64 years old. I think that I'm in really good shape. Thank God. I feel well. I feel competent. I feel like I can go another 20 years. Hopefully so. Inshallah, maybe I can go another 20 years, but I feel good, you know. I take care of myself. I eat right. I sleep right. I do all the good things, you know. Hopefully I can get some longevity out of this and go another 20 years.
So that is something that you just dismiss and put to one
side. Oh, man,
side.
you should see some of the mail that I get, you know. They say that I'm a racist or that I'm a hater, and, you know, I don't know nothing. And, you know, it's mind-boggling, the mail that I get. But such is the life that you live when you're a public figure, you know. I know what I'm talking about. You won't find 10 boxers out there that has worked with me over the years to say that I don't know what I'm talking about. And I'll take the wisdom that I have, the wisdom that I've gathered in all these years, I'll put that wisdom, that knowledge, that application against any trainer in the business today. You know, these people, they embrace what they know.
I want to pick your brain about something. Eddie Chambers signed with Al Heyman, as you know. He had that one fight with the new trainer, and haven't heard from anything of him since. What would be your advice to Eddie Chambers now, who seems to have just sucked into that black hole? He's surely got to be active.
I spoke to Eddie, you know, numerous times, on numerous occasions. And I tried to guide him. I tried to share my wisdom of the route that he should go. And he listened and he didn't listen. And now he's right back to square one. He's done nothing since that fight. And I thought that he should have followed that fight up maybe 3-4 weeks later, maybe a month later, with another fight and another fight. Something to keep him in the public eye, something to keep him busy, something to keep him in good shape. But nothing. He's left the waste away in a gym probably somewhere, you know. I haven't spoken to Eddie. And he knows if I speak to him, I'm going to tell him my mind. I tell any fighter my mind. Because what am I saving it for? If I don't tell people what I think now, if I don't tell the fighter what I think now, or what they need to do, then what am I saving it for? I probably got more years behind me than I have in front of me. So I'm going to tell anybody what I think, what I feel, including Vladimir Klitschko and Eddie Chambers.
So, since the defeat to Fury, I know Vladimir's coming out talking about how he's accepting defeat. What is your take on how the champ, or the former champ, has been, his mindset, and obviously the rematch that's been planned?
We talk regularly, Vladimir and I. We talk regularly. Verbally, we talk through the emails, and he seems to be taking it pretty well, but I'm not inside of his brain, so I don't know what the real person is, I just wrote a post on Facebook addressing what Evander Holyfield has said. Mm-hmm. And my take on it, I said that Vladimir Klitschko is not likely to go outside of his circle. He's not that kind of guy. He's not that kind of guy to go outside the circle, meaning the people that he's spent these last 12, 13 years with. So it's not likely. Either Jonathan Banks is going to remain the trainer or he's going to choose me as the trainer. But it's not likely that he would go outside of the circle. And I wrote there that he has to be totally happy and satisfied with whatever decision he makes. He has to be totally happy and satisfied. You understand? He has to really believe that this is the person that's going to get me in this position to be champion again. Because he cannot afford to make another mistake. He cannot afford it. He cannot afford to lose this rematch. Because at 40 years old, you've got to get it right. So whether he chooses Jonathan Banks to continue to train him, or whether he says, you know what, Bashir, you train me for this fight. Whether he chooses one or the other, most likely it will come from within our circle. I doubt it would be a shock to me if he went outside the circle.
With immediate rematches, the results haven't been good for the person entering the rematch that has lost of recent times. A lot of people have had rematches and have lost on the rematch.
Yeah, a lot of times the person... But that wasn't a devastating loss. You understand? It wasn't a devastating loss. It wasn't like Vladimir was knocked out or beaten up. Because in my mind, neither one of them did that much. Fury did enough to win the fight. But having said that, it wasn't one of those knockdown, drag-out fights that would take something out of a guy emotionally or physically or mentally.
This is somebody who held the world title for an
excellent... Excuse me for 1 minute. I got to close the door. Get a little drafty here. We're in Ukraine.
This is a guy that had the title for X amount of years, and then he fights a young, number one contender and gets beat 8 rounds to 4. So he did get beat pretty convincingly. It wasn't a...
Yeah, but
he was outpointed.
I was there. I was ringside, and I'm saying that I kept saying round after round that to the other member of the camp, the physio guy was sitting next to me. I kept saying he's got to get started. He's got to get started. He's got to do something now because he cannot let these rounds slip past. In my mind, you need to establish something, or don't allow the adversary to establish something in those first 4 to 5 rounds. You need to establish that I'm not going to let you do that, or I am going to let you do that. So I felt that with each passing round that he's got to get started. 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 And he never did get started. And I felt it slipping away. Certainly after the 5th round, I felt that it was slipping away from him in slow motion. So I thought that, you need to apply yourself now, or you're making a mountain, from an anthill, you're making a mountain.
Was there any questions within the camp after the fight?
Everybody's got hindsight. Well, we could have did this, we could have did more of that, we should have did this, we shouldn't have did that, Everybody has it, but the truth of the matter is the only boxing people there is myself and Jonathan Banks. Everybody else is new to boxing in that camp. We got a physio, we got a cook, and it's basically the 4 of us. We are the Klitschko camp. But the only one that really know boxing is myself and Jonathan Banks. The other guys, they know because they've been there for years. They know what they learned from Emmanuel, myself, and Jonathan. But these people are new to boxing, relatively new. They don't have many years in the sport.
Okay, let's take Jonathan Banks aside a second. Let's imagine Emmanuel Stewart was back in his corner for that fight against Fury. What would Emmanuel have been saying to Vladimir that night? What would have been different with Emmanuel Stewart being there?
You letting the goddamn title slip away. The title's slipping away, man. You gotta fucking do something. You gotta fucking get that fucking title slipping away. But that fucking goddamn title. You gotta do something. You need to get on there and jab the goddamn man. The man is not goddamn doing nothing. The man standing there doing nothing. You let the man do something. Goddamn man ain't doing nothing. Just sitting around, let the man just run around the ring and sit pity-patting this. All this. You got to step to the man and hit the goddamn man. The man cut the ring down and fucking fight the man. Goddamn, you got to goddamn man.
Yes. Wow.
Emmanuel would have been irate in the corner.
How would camp have been set up any differently, or would it have been set up the same way as it is? I mean, I'm trying to get an insight how Emmanuel would have operated.
The camp would have been basically the same way that's always been.
Yes.
A little more or a little less. I think that Vladimir pointed out to me in an email, maybe email to other people, he pointed out there are some things in preparation that he should or could have been doing that he got away from doing, and that he was going to restructure the training camp going back into the next fight. So he's going to, coming into the new year, he's going to restructure, and he's going to make specifics about who's doing what and who's going to go where there in the training camp. So everybody's standing by on those instructions.
But is that the way it should be? Should boxer be restructuring camp, or should trainer be restructuring camp? I'm a little confused there. I would have thought that the trainer would say, this is the way it's going to go. I'm the head coach. This is the way it goes. This is how things are put in place.
Well, in this particular case, Dr. Klitschko has decided to be that guy. Many years ago, Sam Solomon, the boxing people now wouldn't know who Sam Solomon was. He's the guy in the corner with Leon Spinks. He's in the corner with the great Matthew Saad Muhammad. But today's fan or today's boxing people don't know about Sam Solomon, a man that spent a lot of rounds and a lot of time around in the Saad Muhammad camp.
There is another Solomon as well. He's a boxer at the moment. I think it's Australian. Sam Solomon, if I'm right.
Yeah. Suleiman.
Yes.
Yeah, Suleiman. But Sam Solomon, this was Sam Solomon. He was the old trainer.
Right.
Sam was virtually 80, 85 years old, training Matthew Saad Muhammad. And he's training Leon Spinks. So this is an old school training that people don't know a lot about. But he trained Leon Spinks to beat Muhammad Ali. And he trained Matthew Saad Muhammad for some great fights. And Saad would come into the camp, and Saad would say, I'm not going to hit the heavy bag this camp. And Sam would sit back and say, he said, hey, everybody, he said, we got a new guy in camp. Everybody would look around and say, yeah, we got a new guy in camp. We got Matthew Saad Muhammad, the boxer, and we got Matthew Saad Muhammad, the trainer. He getting 2 checks, y'all. He getting 2 checks because he's the trainer and the boxer. And this was his way of humoring Saad to say, hey, man, I'm the trainer, and we need to hit the heavy bag. And Saad said, all right, man, come on, all right, I'll hit the heavy bag. So he had a way of humoring him to get him to do that. But Ladd says that he's going to restructure things. He said he's going to restructure it. So that's what can you say?
I think even Stevie Wonder can say, if you're going to restructure and it's the fight of your life, then surely I take the most experienced guy in the camp to help me win back my titles. Clearly.
We have yet to see.
Stevie Wonder, Ray Charles, and can see that, but maybe of course Evander sees something different. So.
I'm not gonna beat the drums to be the trainer for Vladimir Klitschko.
No, absolutely not. I mean, it's not that, and it's no disrespect to Jonathan Banks, but I mean, it's the question that everybody around the world wants to know: why, how, you're not the trainer, and how you stuck around for so long, which I've asked you already.
Well, that's a question for Vladimir Klitschko. Whenever you get a hold of him, you have to ask him that question. Because I'm not him. I'm not in his brain, I would think that after that deal, I would think that I think that after Emmanuel passed, I think that in my mind it was a missed opportunity that I could have shared a lot of things with him to lead him going forward, but that didn't happen, and the rest is history.
Okay, let's flip this a second. Let's flip this a second. Let's take the last 10 years of the Banks era, we'll say, with Klitschko, and let's just try and bring in, potentially, maybe 10 years, but let's bring you in that position. How would Vladimir Klitschko have differed had he been under your tutelage? And it's not to big yourself up, but what sort of a heavyweight would we have been seen under your tutelage with somebody who's a little bit more experienced? Because with more experience, you probably have more guile and tact in how you would get your fighter to fight.
I would have done things differently. I would have done things according. I think that Vladimir was really used to being trained in the Kronk style and the Kronk manner of doing things. Me, I wasn't going to do that. I was going to come in with a whole new regime, a whole new way of doing things according to my knowledge of boxing. That's what I was going to bring in,
See, but right there, by saying that, it's like saying, well, no disrespect to you, but Kronk is the proven recipe. It's brought such success. And then there's Bashir wanting to do his own thing. No, let me stick with what I know, especially with a character something like Klitschko, who's very much controlling and wants to keep things in a certain way and nice and not rock the boat. Then you would come in.
Well, I'm not saying that's going to be changing anything. It was going to be a change. It was just going to be my way of doing things.
But isn't your way of doing things, is that not the fear that Klitschko had, which would have caused him to say, you know what, let me stay with Banks, because that's more of the Kronk way. That's what I know. I'd be diverting away from...
Perhaps. But that particular style is suited for some boxers, and other boxers is not.
But then, okay, so then I would ask the question. Now I'm going in quite hard tonight. If you're going to suggest that your way would have been away from the Kronk way of doing things, which would have been a road of success, I'm not saying it's the unbeatable way or it was the best way ever, but it was certainly a line of consistency of success. What was the line of Bashir's or Positions boxing line of success? If I'm going to move something from success, if I'm going to move from success, then I'm moving to the unknown. What is my
I was going back to the basics. My thing is, if a boxer does something well, then that's why I want to put most of my energy into what he does well. I don't, and I'll defend against the things that he's bad at. Like defense. All right, I work on defense a lot. But I'd also big up the big things that he does, like the punching power. I would have invested more in his punching power, getting him to believe more in his punch, getting him to believe in aggression with skill, not reckless aggression. But I would have had him put more energy into being a little more aggressive, a little more.
For those people who would be asking the question, well, what would the Bashir way be? Now, there was a conversation. Prince Nazim Hamed is a perfect example of this. When Nazim came into camp and Nazim had his way, his style, very flamboyant, and he was, hit and move and very flamboyant, dancing, and he managed to wanted Naseem to sit down on his punches and load up, whereas you were quite the opposite and said, no, if he loads up more, then he's going to be more vulnerable to
I was quite vocal about that. I was quite vocal. I said, Emmanuel, this guy has been doing this here ever since he's a little kid. All right? Since he's a little kid. I said, at this point in his career, just leave him alone. Let him just leave him alone. You know, everything he does is wrong. Everything Roy Jones did was wrong. Everything that Muhammad Ali did was wrong. But when you leave those guys to do what they do, they become great fighters. You can't go in there tinkering and tampering with something that a fighter does good. You can't go in there tinkering and tampering because you're going to lose the fighter, you know. So I just think that when you stick with the basics, that the fighter himself will originate a style to work from. When you go in with the basics, then the fighter himself will structure something to protect himself. Who knows better about somebody protecting himself than the person that's got to be protected?
I think the warning signs were when he fought Augie Sanchez. That fight where Hamid got dropped twice looked awful, but yet was able to pull himself out of trouble with a big punch. He was too vulnerable. He was getting caught too often.
I think that trainers is okay. let me close the door. Okay, all right. Where were we?
Trainers.
I think that trainers are overrated. I mean, I'm going back, to the 50s, 60s, when trainers were always in the background teaching and plotting and planning on how to win a fight. But now we come to the age of the designer trainer, where trainers want to be all up in the cameras, where trainers want to get their careers off the ground more than they're looking after the fighters. Everybody wants to be up in the camera. I can do this, I can do that. This trainer is better for that fighter and that fighter. The truth of the matter is that the fighters, let's bring the spotlight back to the fighters. Those are the guys that's going out either make or breaking the trainers. You understand that everything is spotlight. Well, if he had Freddie Roach, or if he had Teddy Atlas, or if he had Bill Johnson, or if he had John David Jackson, if he had Virgil Hunter, or Boo Boo Thompson, or whoever they have, it's the fighter that's making or breaking the trainers. It's the collaboration between the two. It's a give and take scenario. But at the end of the day, the trainer is the one who is discovering on how to beat an opponent, and it's the fighter who has to go out there with the prescription and apply it.
Okay. So in closing this, let's end with Evander Holyfield. Let's just say that Klitschko was to leave the camp of Bashir and Banks and head over to Freddie Roach.
I think he would be making a big mistake.
Well, let's envision Freddie Roach being the trainer of Vladimir Klitschko for the rematch against Tyson Fury. What does Freddie Roach bring? We know he's good at teaching attack, but his fighters have never been good in terms of defense.
Well, the first question I would ask is, who did you ever bring from day one? What fighters have you trained from day one? You trained fighters that was given to you, that already knew how to fight, and perhaps you built on them, and somehow you might have even made it worse. He had the fighter Juan Lascano, the Hispanic causing panic.
Yes.
And in my mind, Juan Lascano went down with Freddie Roach, not up. That one fighter stays in my mind. So what I'm saying is that every fighter is not for every trainer, and vice versa.
See, everyone would say the star fighter is Manny Pacquiao for.
Right, in my mind, Freddie Roach got him knocked out.
Exactly.
With Juan Manuel Marquez in that last fight, they were going to stop that fight. I felt that Juan Manuel Marquez was on the verge of being stopped in that fight, but Freddie Roach was so gung-ho to get the KO, he actually told Manny Pacquiao, step on the gas, go out, I'm going there, blah, blah, blah. He was so interested in getting the KO that Manny Pacquiao ran into a punch that had Freddie Roach had made a little adjustment, saying just box the guy and keep putting punches together and moving around the way you're doing, they would have stopped that fight. But his mindset was, we need the knockout. Why? Because I want the light on me. I said that you knock him out, I need the knockout. You understand? So even the best known trainers can go out and make a mistake. When a trainer's in that corner, mind you, he got 1 minute to make those adjustments. And it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes they might miss something. They may overlook something, you know? And I think that Freddie Roach might he might have overlooked something that night. But what fighters have he bought from the beginning? Where have they been? I mean, what has he done? You know, but people say he's the top trainer. He's the top trainer. Why? Because the people gave him fighters.
Which heavyweight has Freddie Roach trained, bar Mike Tyson, who's probably finished by then?
Michael Moore. Did he work with Michael Moore?
He did at one point, didn't he? I think.
But what? I mean, what have he done? He's had Michael Moore. He's had Mike Tyson. You know, he's had James Toney, but all of those guys were seasoned fighters at the end of their careers. What has he done? I'm not knocking Freddie Roach, but I'm not bigging him up either. There are a lot of trainers out there who might be better, but just haven't had that opportunity, you know? You can't go out and tell me that this guy is better. I see it all the time. What guy is better? What guy is better? And then they say, Freddie Roach and the who's who of the trainers in the last 10 or 15, 20 years. But they don't know nothing about the Ray Arcells, the Freddie Browns, you know, the Luther Burgess, the Walter Smiths, the Bill Mills. They don't know nothing about these people. The Sam Solomons. You know, they don't, the Tommy Parks. They don't know nothing about those trainers from the past. They don't know nothing.
Where do you put the Mayweathers then?
Where'd I put them at?
Yeah.
They did a fine job training Floyd Mayweather Jr., but I think that's in the guy's blood. The guy's just a born fighter. The family is a fighting family. It's in Mayweather's blood. He's just the finishing product of what the three brothers were. You know? He was the finishing product with the three brothers. But I don't think they're any better than the other trainers out there. I don't see where they're any better than the other trainers out there. Floyd is what put them on the map. Without Floyd putting them on the map, where would they be at? They're just like anybody. They're just like any other trainers out there. I don't see anything special about them.
Virgil Hunter with Andre Ward.
Virgil Hunter did a fine job with Andre Ward. Having said that, I mean, you know, he must have trained other fighters along with Andre Ward. Where are they? I don't see where he's any different from any other trainers out there. There are a lot of guys out there applying their trade. What I do think is that the trainers, the well-known trainers out there, I think that, you know, when you get into that $1 million bracket where you're making that kind of money, I think that they need to go back and look at the amateur coaches out there, because those amateur coaches is what's preparing these guys to come into the pros. And those amateur coaches don't get no help. They don't get no money. They don't get no kind of respect, no kind of light, no kind of anything. But in reality, those guys are being taught the basics. How to step, how to jab, how to hook, how to counter, how to roll. Those guys are being taught by the amateur coaches, and nobody respects those amateur coaches. Those guys are the real heroes. The amateur coaches. You get these guys when they become pro, okay, we'll take over now. And you don't go back and say, here go $5,000 for your amateur program. Here goes some gloves for the gym. You know what I'm saying? Nobody gives nothing back to the amateur groups. And nobody says nothing about those amateur coaches who's teaching those kids. Those are the guys that are real heroes. You know? You say the professional coaches. Yeah, the professional coaches has some power in which way the guys goes at the pros, but who prepares them to come in? You take the two twins, the junior middleweight, one of them is middleweight, the champion, what's the twins out there with Ronnie Shields?
Charlos?
The Charlos. Those guys come from a big amateur background. They came from an amateur background. So they came to Ronnie Shields knowing a lot. They didn't just happen along, come from the flower field, and guys could fight. They had an amateur background, and they came from people teaching them and preparing them for the pros. One of them is the champion now. So I'm saying, you know, everybody's saying this trainer, that trainer, this trainer. My goal is just to be a good trainer, to be the best trainer for the people that I'm working with. You know, you got people in the Hall of Fame. I call it the Hall of Fraud, because you got people in the Hall of Fame that got no business being there, and then you got great talents like Iran Barkley, who's not in the Hall of Fame. Donald Curry is not in the Hall of Fame, and I'm saying, why not? Why not? What are we overlooking here? Maybe we the people are just dumb. But when you don't have Iran Barkley, a guy that knocked out Tommy Hearns in his prime, and he came back and beat Tommy Hearns again in his prime, he's not in the Hall of Fame. Donald Curry, you know, who came in and unified the welterweight championship by knocking out the Kronk fighter Milt McCory, you know, and I think he was the fighter of the year that year, and he unified the welterweight title and went on to win the junior middleweight title. And he's not in the Hall of Fame. So something is wrong. Why is it taking him that long? And there's lesser people that's in the Hall of Fame. So it goes on what people think, or the people that's in power think. We think this person should be in, so that person is in. He's in, no doubt about it. He belongs to the Hall of Fame. What did he do to get there? And they can't answer it. But you don't have Iran Barkley in there. I don't think Eddie Mustafa's in there. I don't think this guy's in there, if I'm not mistaken, you know. They should be in there because they fought. The boxers need to be considered first before they get everybody else in there. So you're fanning or waving and saying, this guy, that guy, this guy is great, that guy's great, he's the greatest trainer, this and that. It has become more about the trainers than it is the boxers. The boxers out there putting their blood and sweat on the line, and they're getting the least amount. You got the trainer all up in the camera with the boxer because he's here because I did it. You know, he's here because I'm the trainer. If I wasn't the trainer, perhaps he wouldn't be here. You know? I mean, you can make or break yourself being on there. Well, the reason that the fighter didn't, you know, like they're saying now, that John David Jackson messed up by taking the fight with Ortiz, with Jennings.
I'm hearing a story that I heard that Jennings only had 2 weeks to train for the fight. That's what I heard.
Well, if he took the fight with 2 weeks training, then he did it to himself. No way I would have taken that fight with 2 weeks training. And my thinking is, you know, of course, hindsight. My thinking is, why would you take a fight with a guy like Ortiz, a lefty, an experienced lefty, Cuban, you know, well-documented fighter? Why would you take this fight and you're just starting to work with John David Jackson 2, 3, 4 months, whatever the case was, it wasn't enough. Why would you take this fight right off the bat? You know, why? It's such a dangerous fight with a lefty that's experienced. So why not take one, maybe 2 fights with 2 lefties before going into a fight like that to give yourself time to work with the trainer, to make those adjustments, because he had been with Fred Jenkins for most of his career, probably all of his career. So let's take 2 fights with 2 lefties and envision us fighting Ortiz. We'll see how we do these 2 lefties, and then we go forward with the fight.
Do you think Fred Jenkins would have given Bryant Jennings a different look for that fight, or do you think it would have been the same thing?
Well, he seemed to be, from where I'm sitting, he seemed to be playing right into a southpaw's hands, and I couldn't understand it because John David Jackson was a champion and a southpaw. So it seems to me that John David would have prepared him better, or maybe Jennings wasn't following the instructions. But it seems to me that he would have been better prepared to box with a southpaw, being that his trainer was a southpaw. You know, he would say he would educate him on the do's and don'ts of boxing a southpaw. But it seemed to me that he was falling to every trap of a southpaw. And I just couldn't understand it. You know, I couldn't understand how could he be getting hit with these punches when his trainer was a southpaw and a world champion. So why isn't he better prepared to deal with what's going on?
More news. Ike Ikubuchi, the fighter I was talking to you about.
Well, you know, from now on, the fights are going to take place here in the Ukraine and Russia and Britain, because they're going to ban boxing in America when they let Ike Ikubuchi come back to boxing at 43 years old. They're going to ban it. He's going to give boxing a bad name.
What?
And people, yeah, he's going to, because he's
No,
going to
they
get his ass
can't say that about Ike Ikubuchi.
He's going to get his ass whooped.
What?
All right?
No.
Okay, listen. They're going to have a defibrillator at ringside in every corner.
Yes.
All right? He's going to get his ass whooped so bad they're going to say we're going to get an announcement from Obama before he gets out of office and say, we're going to ban boxing in America because this idiot did come out of prison after 13 years, 43. He's going to come out and try to box, and he's going to get his ass whooped.
Well, hold on. Look, maybe I'm sentimental here. I'm sentimental, but hold on. Guy comes back, has 4 or 5 nice warm-up fights, gets himself back into the groove of things. Aren't you excited to see he could be a part of the sort of heavyweight mix doing something?
Who's he going to be?
Shagayev. Lucas Brown, I don't know.
Okay. But
you know, the last thing a heavyweight loses is punch.
Yeah. If he could find a guy waiting on the porch for that punch to arrive.
I just have some hope for him. Just a little hope. He won't be as bad as Razor Ruddock.
No. I just think that...
Too late?
I think too late. You know, too late. He's got to do a lot to get back. He's going to be dealing with a young crew. You know, I can see a guy like Jennings beating him up. You know, it's just too late, I think, you know. I just want to just dream the dream, you know. It's not that 43 is a death sentence, because I feel that if a guy lives properly and takes care of himself properly, he can extend his career. He can go to 47, 48, but he's got to be in good shape. He's got to get the proper rest, the proper diet, the proper training regime.
But he looked in really good. He looked in good shape. And I don't know what he's been like in prison or what he's been doing in prison.
Well, perhaps he can get back, perhaps. But I think that George Foreman closed the door on that. I think it's going to be a long time before we see another George Foreman. You know, it's going to be a long time. You know, this guy going to be put somewhere. But, you know, kudos to him. If he can do it, you know, I'm all for it. You know, I just don't want to see the guy get hurt.
I don't want to see him get hurt. But, you know, all those memories of him against Tua and against... You know, Chris Bird. And
yeah. But that's to get people in trouble. Sitting around reminiscing, looking at the old videos and thinking they can do this in real life. You know.
I'm hoping to God he doesn't get clipped and knocked out, but it's.
We'll see. We'll see how he does. You know.
You don't hold much hope for him though. He signed a deal, I believe, with Michael Conch.
Yeah.
So other than that, it's a.
They're going to match him up. Real good. It'll be 2 years before he gets back to form to fight for a title. It'll be 24, 25 months before he gets back. They'll match him up pretty good. They'll give him a couple. But there's some fights that he's going to have to go through to get there. You know, I'd like to see him do well. You know, I just don't want to see him get hurt.
Him versus Shannon Briggs.
Good matchup.
There you go. It's a fight you can have after 3 or 4 fights.
Shannon can't stay on the fence. Shannon's going to have to come out and fight. He's going to have to fight somebody soon. People, you know, he's got to come out and fight. If he wants to solidify his position, let's go, champ. If he wants to solidify that, he is going to have to roll the dice. He's going to have to put his ass on the floor and fight.
Is there any more information of him and you exchanging money and possibly...
Listen. You know, like I say, you know, attorneys, physicians, we all hustle. You understand? Everybody hustling. Everybody trying to make their bed comfortable before they retire. All you got to do is put that money in an escrow account. $250,000. Listen to me. I'm saying it right here on your show. Yes. When you call Shannon, tell them $250,000 in an escrow account. Non-refundable. whether he gets the big fight or not, that 250 stays with me. That's the way you do business. You know, money talks and BS walks. Put the $250,000 in an escrow account, non-refundable, and we can go out there and do the do. Shannon knows what I said to you earlier, and I meant that.
Yes.
Chemistry is what makes fighters. When a fighter has a chemistry with a trainer, then you can make some progress. All right? But I don't care what the trainer knows. I don't care what the boxer knows. If the trainer and the boxer does not have an alliance, a chemistry, nothing's going to happen. I don't care what they know.
Question: have you ever been into managing fighters? And if so, if you haven't, why not?
I only managed Maurice Harris. I managed Maurice Harris. That's the only fighter that I really, really managed, because I couldn't get to manage other boxers because they wouldn't listen long enough. I'm not putting my money. I did a couple of fighters, you know, but I didn't have the enthusiasm to do it. I managed Maurice Harris, and I managed to make a lot of money with Maurice Harris.
So how does it work with Usyk then? Usyk's got his own manager then?
Yeah.
Who's his manager?
Well, K2 is promoting him, and his manager, I can't even say his name, because his name got about 37 words in it, you know.
He's Ukrainian.
Yeah, he's Ukrainian.
Right, that's right, fine. So he has a manager then, fine, fair enough.
You know, he's manager, but I managed Maurice Harris quite successfully. I had some great success with Maurice Harris. I managed him, and I trained him for some of his best fights.
Is that difficult to do?
You got to know what you're doing. You know, you got to know what you're doing. Managing boxers and managing singers is similar. You know, you got to go out and make the best deals. You got to hash it up with the who's of boxing to get there, you know. I managed to make a good deal with Don King.
Yeah, you told me.
And I made a good deal with Don King. And Don did a lot of people bad, I understand, but he didn't do me bad. I think the deal I made with him was a pretty good deal, and I made out pretty good.
But I heard, the story I heard is that Don King rips you off, but he pays you more than those people that would rip you off normally anyway.
Well, if he ripped me off, you know, I'm all right. If Don King ripped me off, you know, I'm happy with him, you know. I mean, he pissed me off a couple of times, you know, especially at the end, you know, but I had nobody to blame for that setback but myself, because I didn't read the fine print. You know, he kind of.
Did you?
Yeah, but it was just because I didn't read the fine print. But overall, I think that Don King and I had a great relationship. That's just to say that you can't get ripped if you know what you're doing. And I came in the door with Don, and I knew what I was doing as a manager. I came in the door, and I managed Harris, and I managed to get... I mean, mind you, when I made the deal with Don King, Maurice Harris had 10 losses. 10 losses. And I made a deal to get $50,000 per fight off television. And every time I got a fight on television, I got $100,000. We had 5 fights with Don. So, you know, I'm, you know...
You're happy?
I was happy about the results, you know. I was happy. You know, we bumped heads a couple of times, but he did all right with him.
Well, it's interesting. More fight fans seem to be more upset with Don King than people who actually have done business with him. So that's something. And you're getting paid, and they're not.
They're all these promoters. They're all slick. They all come in with their arm around your shoulder, patting you on the back. Yeah, we're gonna do right by you, this, that. But if you don't know what you're doing, they're gonna get you. They're not there to help you. They're there to help themselves. And if they find a door open where they can just throw a couple of thousand in that door without you seeing it, they're going to throw a couple of thousand in there because you won't know it. So you got to go in there with a flashlight and a video camera, watching every move they make to get your money, to get your just due. I hashed a deal out with Don King The deal started at 10 o'clock in the morning and wound up going to 3:30 the next morning on Don King's bed in his room, sitting on his bed. Harris, Don King, myself, and my good friend Charles Muniz. Don't let me miss Charles Muniz. We were sitting on a bed in that room, and we stayed in that room. We was bumping heads in that room. It was a steamy affair, but we left out of that room with an ironclad deal. And 3 weeks later, we was in the ring with Chris Bird for $100,000 on the William Joppy Tito Trinidad fight. So, you know, like I said, if Don did something wrong, it's because money-hungry fighters allowed it. They went in just looking at the dollar sign, but they didn't go in with the proper negotiating skills to know how. They say, oh, Don King, he ripped off Holyfield, he ripped off this person, he ripped off that person. You can't get ripped off if you got any kind of education about how to keep your money. You got to have some kind of education, some kind of knowledge about your money. You know, so I'll do business with him again. I'll do business with him again because I know what I'm doing. Don King told me something. He said, did I steal from you? I might have stolen a nickel here and there. You understand? He said, but don't worry about that. He said, I'm going to give you a certificate for every dime I stole from you. And I said, what's the certificate for? He said, that certificate is to see that nobody else steal from you ever again.
I like that one.
You know? He said, that's a degree. He said, mind you, he said, nobody else going to give you a degree. I gave you a degree in how not to get ripped off.
Excellent.
You understand?
He's an excellent
He said, with this degree will ensure that you never get ripped off by nobody else. Because you've been ripped off by the best.
Uncle Bashir, thank you so much for talking to Bayloric TV.
Don King said, son, he said, we're going to meet on the 80th floor of one of these high-rise buildings. I said, what? I was steaming this day. He said, we're going to meet on the 80th floor of one of these high-rise buildings. I said, what you talking about, man? He said, we're going to meet on the 80th floor of one of these high-rise buildings. He said, but we're going to be on separate sides of the windows. He said, I'm going to be on the inside of the window making multi-million-dollar deals, and you're going to be on the outside of the window washing them. He said, why? Because you fell in love with the product. He said, I don't fall in love with the product. He said, I fall in love with winning. He said, how else can I help your losing ass? He said, have a nice day. So these are the things that I take. You understand?
Yep.